Every morning you are posed with a very, very simple question. Should I kill myself or have a cup of coffee? Now I know this is a very, very gloomy beginning, and to be clear, I'm not advocating for any form of self-harm whatsoever. Rather, I'm posing a problem, a personal and philosophical question that just has no straightforward answer. Camus thought that this question, the question of suicide, was the most fundamental philosophical question that there is. In comparison, questions like whether the Earth orbits the Sun or vice versa are just absolutely inconsequential. And now, one reason against suicide, at least one may think, is that, well, life is purposeful, whereas death is not. Death is senseless. The notion that life is purposeful is a common sense view that most religions, philosophies, and people throughout history have most likely held. However, the existentialists disagree, and their disagreement is most succinctly put in the existentialist slogan. Existence precedes essence. For simplicity's sake, I'm going to swap out the word essence for purpose, but if you want to hear more about the original slogan and where it comes from, I have a longer version of this video which goes more into depth on my channel. So the notion that existence precedes purpose is pretty loaded, so I'm going to take a minute to break it down. Sartre claims that humans could only have a purpose if bestowed by a god who created them, right? Without such a god, humanity is just a coincidence of evolution on Earth. Any particular individual is even more bizarre. There's no ultimate reason your parents met or conceived you, nor is there a reason their parents met and conceived them, nor their parents, and so on and so forth. Even the entire world, considered in all its beauty and marvel and everything that's fantastic about it, is itself a kind of nothingness when considered against the infinite expanse of the universe. As the universe operates, whether randomly or according to determinate laws or some mix of both, it's clearly not taking any of this, any of what we're doing here, into account. Subspecie aeternitatis, which is, sorry for my Latin, is just to say, from the perspective of the universe, it's nonsensical to say that there's a purpose to our lives, right? If you've ever looked out at the night sky and realized how tiny you and everything that you care about is, you might know what I'm talking about. However, our existence, the fact that we are and are aware that we are in every moment, is absolutely certain. It is the most, if not only, self-evident fact. We are both born without a predetermined purpose and in any waking moment exist without a settled path into the next moment. And yet, we engage in a continuous attempt to create our own essence, to build a solid, stable, knowable thing called me. We want to create a solidified entity that not only describes our past, but declares who we are, our authentic nature, and our purpose in the world for the future. However, so long as we live, this work remains incomplete. The scope of freedom means that you could, in any moment, choose a different course. Someone could be a vegan of 15 years and then suddenly decide to pick up their phone and order a cheeseburger. No matter how committed one is to a purpose, their freedom means that they always have to wrestle with choices that determine who they are in the next moment. This job just is never complete. Most existentialists are committed to the notion that there's nothing that completely determines what we do and, by extension, who we are. In other words, in every action, my is what moves the needle, not some prior determining cause. I can in any moment espouse any value and take any course of action, and I'm entirely responsible for that process. Therefore, our existence becomes defined by a peculiar predicament. We find ourselves with a freedom and responsibility that is seemingly endless. We're presented with choices in every moment, from the minute, like what breakfast to eat or whether to like this YouTube video, which you should, to the existential, who to marry, what to study, and what career to pursue. Each decision, no matter how small, determines who you are, your very essence, and yet you're left without a guide. In Sartre's words, man is condemned to be free. In every moment, we are like a traveler coming up to a crossroads, paths sprawling out every which way, but with no directions, no map. This conflict between our freedom and a lack of guidance is what existentialist authors call, among other names, absurdity. Absurdity, broadly defined, is an ever-present and deeply disparaging conflict between our psychological need for reasons, values, and meaning to guide our freedom, and then the absence of reasons, values, and meaning found in the world. According to the existentialists, absurdity is our central psychological source of suffering. It leaves us feeling abandoned in a foreign world full of fear and anxiety. On the search for meaning, values, and purpose, which is human life, we are condemned to come up empty, to fail. Any values we may find are ultimately illusory, rooted in false hope or self-deception. The world's disorder, cruelty, pointlessness, and irrationality go against everything that we seem to need from it. It is as though the world simply isn't fit for for beings with our sorts of minds. As pessimistic as this philosophy may seem, existentialists insist that their philosophy is actually affirming towards the human condition. By starting from the experience of facing a foreign and uncertain world from the perspective of a subject, the existentialists seek to honestly and accurately describe how we experience the world, without being misled by false explanations, whether by religion or scientific optimism. In other words, their aim is to diagnose the crux of the human condition, and then provide a positive prescription to face this problem. Now that we know the problem existentialists are essentially concerned with, the critical point is how do we move forwards. As a reminder, the problem of absurdity is the conflict between our abundant freedom juxtaposed with the lack of direction. Any stress you've experienced at the hands of any decision is you experiencing the problem of absurdity. It's important to note that the existentialists think absurdity doesn't just come up at the most major crossroads of our lives, like what to study, what job to take, or whether or not to stay in a relationship. Rather, every moment is wide open with choices, and insubstantial as these choices may seem, they determine who you are. To create an approximate taxonomy, I will present 3 categories of response to absurdity. A person who lives the life of bad faith denies their agency and attempts to become a determined object in the world. When confronted with options, they offload their freedom. In other words, they do what some authority, whether their mom, a fitness watch, their favorite influencer, or a pastor, tells them to, instead of choosing actions for themselves. They may make a false appeal to a prior cause or claim that they're acting in accordance with what is objectively demanded, according to some irreducible but ultimately false explanation. They're passively tossed around by an ocean of desires and emotions. Passions, as they're called. When angry, they vent on Twitter. When horny, they go to Tinder or internet porn. When confronted with why they did something, they deny their freedom, making an excuse. They say that situations and people made them feel certain ways, which made them act as they did. They're passive recipients to an uncontrolled and uncontrollable environment, and as important as their freedom may be, the fear of freely choosing actions and values is so great that they would rather deny the freedom to begin with. They choose passive irresponsibility to avoid the torment of choice, responsibility, and absurdity. According to the existentialists, this is how most people live, and we are all tempted into bad faith once in a while. It's something about the human condition that we make excuses for ourselves. We say that we didn't choose actions, but that they were demanded, that we had to do something. For example, imagine the simple situation where your friends are asking you if you can go out, but you have some work to do, or you have some homework to do, or you have some assignment to get done, or an email to send. So you say, I can't go out because I have to do this work, right? Happens all the time. That notion that you have to do something and that you're not choosing to do it, that's the bad faith that existentialists are trying to avoid. So according to the existentialists, bad faith is the worst way to go about life. As it were, the person of bad faith closes their eyes while walking down the path of life, stumbling wherever they're pushed, without taking any accountability for where they end up. Even for people who generally avoid bad faith, it remains possible to succumb to its temptation. While different authors disagree about which of the alternatives is better, I think it's fair to say that on the whole, both alternatives are superior to bad faith. As this is a broad categorization, I can't do any justice to the views of any one particular author. So if you want to hear more about precise views of Kierkegaard, Camus, Sartre, and Beauvoir, I'd recommend you watch the longer version of this video, which is up on my channel. The person of purpose basically says the following. Considering absurdity comes from a lack of objective purpose, I'll just espouse a purpose for myself, treating certain values as though they were objective. This is to say that the person of purpose chooses through their freedom values for themselves and commits to the end goals of these values through every action. The purposeful person consults their values at any and all crossroads, and their values point them in one direction or another. For example, if I thought that accumulating wealth was the most important thing in the world, I could choose this as my primary value. When consulted with any decision, for example, what to order at a restaurant, or what to study, what job to take, or whether to marry, I could simply consult my core value and it would, for better or worse, point me in a particular direction. If my thirst for wealth didn't give me a direction, for example, between 2 jobs with the exact same salary, I could then consult a secondary value, let's say power. If that still didn't point me in a direction, then I can consult my third value, then my fourth value, so on and so forth, until I'm getting guidance on all of my life's decisions. In order for this solution to actually work, I would have to be absolutely committed to my values in the face of a world that tempts me to sacrifice them. As Kierkegaard puts it, you have to resign infinitely to your values, standing by them in all actions. If your values are not absolutely stable such that you can faithfully trust your values through all your actions, and you haven't done much in terms of resolving absurdity. For example, if I sort of tentatively espouse helping others as my primary value, but I'm not really sure about it, and I maybe suspect making money is actually, more important. Then when these values conflict, helping other people and making money, I have to let the values battle themselves out in my head. As an analogy, having uncertain values and value structures like standing at a crossroads with contradictory maps, trying to decide which map to trust. On the other hand, if I live resigned to my values where I know the order of all of them, there is no question, there's no doubt, and there's no absurdity. The life of purpose is good in that it avoids absurdity, but does the end justify the means? In living the life of purpose, there's a tremendous sacrifice. Not only do you live resigned to a value such that you give up anything that may conflict with that value, but you have to give up rationality, at least in a certain sense. There may not be a rationally sound way of choosing your values, and there likely isn't a rational way to commit to them, come what may. While a weaker commitment could be made, such a commitment wouldn't resolve absurdity in totality. As an oversimplification, many other existentialists claim that living resigned to particular values, the purposeful life, is objectionably irrational, and or that it constitutes bad faith, the kind of life that we originally investigated. They say that it constitutes bad faith because you become determined by your values in much the same way as, say, the person of bad faith becomes determined by whatever is pleasurable. These philosophers claim that there is no solution to our situation, but there is a more authentic way to respond. This response, which I'm calling the life of absurdity, constitutes an acceptance of the absurd condition of our lives, and acting within absurdity while embracing the freedom and responsibility that our actions possess. Freedom is terrifying, and you don't need to, nor should you, try to avoid choices or the feelings that come along with them. There may not be a solution to our condition, but to live authentically within it, we must remain free, even if that means being filled with fear. Unfortunately for the absurd life, there isn't too much specific to be said. One way the absurd life could look is doing everything possible in the face of its meaninglessness. For example, in response to the strict exceptionalist rule that every pursuit is utterly meaningless in the face of death, Camus instructs us to do it all with a smile while holding an unshakable awareness, the reality that there's no reason for any of it. Another way to look at the absurd life is an embrace of the huge responsibility we hold as agents, and simply attempting to do everything we can to be the best possible people we can in every single moment. But regardless of all else, I think existentialists are going to say something in the following vein. The way to approach life is through your freedom at this very moment. Not in an hour, not tomorrow, not in 10 years, but now. To recognize everything that you want to and can do, and to simply make a choice. If you get nothing else from watching this, I hope that you click off this YouTube video and step into the world with the realization that each moment is wide open with options. Whatever has happened in your life up to this moment doesn't determine who you are, nor does it determine what you do in the next moment. Embrace the uncertainty of the now, and try something new. If that's too scary, choose a value and ask yourself in each moment, how can I bring this value into being? Let your actions speak of your commitments and navigate life freely and with purpose. This journey isn't about finding yourself walking someone else's preordained path. Rather, it's about creating your own, moment by moment, through actions that honor who you seek to be. If you're not a little scared, you're probably not doing it right. I'm going to end on this quote by Camus, where he says, "Freedom is nothing but a chance to be better." Thank you for watching.